Harry's wife. She is evil. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. The concept of good and evil, good and bad, of course, is a matter of perspective. The simplest example that one can give is that one person's freedom fighter is another person's terrorist. It all depends on how you're looking at it. One of my earliest books that I wrote is called Evil. I gave it such a title so that people would be drawn to it, and so that they'd want to understand more about its content. I also labelled it as such because I recognise that the behaviours that I engage in and those of fellow narcissists are labelled often as evil. Of course, from our perspective, certain narcissists don't see that what they're doing is problematic at all. They simply don't see it. Others recognise that it's a problem for somebody else, but it is justified. In other instances, we deem that it is completely necessary. I often give the example of Adolf Hitler, who, it is generally acknowledged by most people, engaged in evil behaviours and was intrinsically evil. He, however, did not, after a day of ordering people to be executed, think to himself, goodness me, Adolf, what a terrible human being you are. What an awful day you've had ordering all of those people to be sent to the gas chamber. Goodness me, how am I going to sleep at night? He didn't. He didn't regard himself as evil. He regarded what he was doing as necessary, that the clearance of areas to create Lebensraum for the German people. Accordingly, it's a matter of perspective. But with Harry's wife, she has been labelled evil. In The Spectator, an article by Cara Kennedy titled Harry's Wife's Comeback, Welcome to the Maganaissance, which doesn't really scan particularly well. The article is about the Duchess of Sussex attempting to salvage her reputation, which of course is something that a narcissist would do for the purposes of managing that all-important facade. Harry's wife, as a middle mid-ranger, operates a facade. She wants to portray to the outside world that she's kind, that she has her rescue chickens of authenticity, that she supports sex workers by virtue of the bananas of empowerment, that she cares about people, that she is wholesome and empathic. Of course, the repeated instances of behind-the-scenes information demonstrates that she's not. Furthermore, we have seen repeated fractures in that facade. Notwithstanding the fact that so many people have seen through her and continue to do so, she is not suddenly going to give up on the facade. She has no choice in the matter. Her narcissism is going to continue to compel her to try and convince the world that she is a kind and decent person. And it's doing so because it's sustained repeated attacks against it by the impugning of her reputation. You know that these amount to threats to control. Cara Kennedy writes, maybe it was always going this way. After being a briefcase girl, an actress, a D-list celebrity, and blowing it as a real-life royal, perhaps the only natural next step for Harry's wife was to become an influencer. Ugh. Look at Fergie, once married to Prince Andrew. Now the Duchess of York makes her living writing romance novels, selling jam, and giving exclusive interviews to any tabloid that will buy her lunch. The difference is that whilst Fergie is somewhat self-centred, she is not a narcissist, and is a generally well-intentioned individual. The truth is that there is no glamour in being an ex-something. Look at the washed-up ex-wives and girlfriends of sports stars, selling herbal tea on Instagram for a few bucks, and being paid to show up at crappy provincial nightclubs filled with teenagers. It's harder to be fussy when you need to pay the bills. This, though, was not the future that Harry's wife expected when she and Harry decided to exile themselves to Los Angeles. She was to trade in her royal life to become the next Amal Clooney, spending her days fighting for women's rights as a glamorous philanthropist attending the most exclusive Hollywood events. But it turns out that telling fibs and constantly scheming leaves you pretty low down on the LA thought leader come it girl list. Who knew? Of course, as I've explained to you from the very beginning, that these instances are the collateral consequences of her narcissism, that where it seeks to control in this instant, because it's of a mid-range variety, it causes a future problem. Not that she cares, because when she meets that future, her narcissism just again, through delusion, blame-shifting, compartmentalization, causes her to ignore, deflect from the problem, and kick the can down the road again. But the problem is that for her, as viewed by the outside world, more and more people see through her. And therefore, the fact that she had such a brilliant opportunity with the royal family, but she blew it, and now, although she is wealthy, she is largely disliked. Other than a rump of idiotic, brainwashed supporters, all she can do is spend the money to try and keep convincing the world that she is popular, that she is interesting, that she is a kind and empathic person. But it's never going to work. By now, the downfall of Harry's wife is well documented. The point of her lowest ebb, earlier this year, was when her popularity with the British public plummeted to its lowest yet. According to a March poll, Harry's wife's popularity dropped 31 points since November, leaving her with an approval rating of -33. This, of course, is a huge problem for a narcissist such as Harry's wife. Harry and Harry's wife made the big move across the pond with the hopes of cracking America, but things aren't much better on that side. Just 27% of Americans say they like Harry's wife now, compared to 44% who say they don't. It seems that the pair's plan to speak their truth in the form of shitflix documentaries, numerous interviews, podcasts and a book deal, and be lavish with money, praise and sympathy for doing so, isn't going quite to plan. There are different theories about what could save them at this point, if a PR resurrection is even possible. The Sussexes putting on a united front and attending the coronation of King Charles III on Saturday would have been a good start. After months of speculation, the couple announced in a recent statement, of course, that Harry would attend alone and Harry's wife would stay in California with their children to celebrate Archie's 4th birthday. Yada, yada, yada. In January, when Harry released his memoir, Spare, Harry's wife was noticeably absent from the promotional interviews. At the time, people were shocked that the usually inseparable pair didn't show up together to his many appearances. As you know from my work, I was not, and it's all part of her hanging him out to dry. At the time, sources claimed that there was friction between the couple that stemmed from the negative reaction to the book. Whatever happened, Harry's wife's presence by Harry's side would have made things even more awkward for the renegade prince. Imagine her next to Harry during his interview with ITV's Tom Bradby, in which he reneged on his wife's claim that the royal family was racist, saying instead that she was the victim of unconscious bias. The couple have long claimed that the royal family did nothing to dispel certain press-concocted narratives, blame-shifting, victim mentality, about them. Yet for nearly 3 years, they readily allowed Harry's family to be branded as pompous racists, absence of emotional empathy. But does Harry's wife's coronation snub and low-key approach to her husband's book mean that she's retreating from the limelight for good? Not at all. It looks like Harry's wife's time out will be soon over because she's gearing up to the return to public life. We, of course, saw the reveal in the TED Talk speech. She undertook a video message introducing photographer and friend Meeson Harriman ahead of his TED Talk speech. And she debuted a new look, darker, slickly straightened hair and minimal makeup. See parts passing with regard to the analysis of that. Harry's wife's makeover held symbolic importance. straying away from her usual overdone look. She instead offered a more grown-up appearance. The next sighting, of course, came at the LA Lakers game with Harry in tow. It was the first time they'd been seen in public together in more than a month, and it didn't do much to dispel rumours of a rift. The Duchess awkwardly declined a kiss from Harry as they were captured on the Jumbotron at the Crypto.com arena in front of 20,000 people, including Kim Kardashian and Adam Sandler. See parts passing for the analysis there. We've also, just recently, of course, seen her on her supposed hiking. See Take a Hike for the analysis of that. However, if Harry's wife's transition to an ex-royal influencer is to be successful, social media will prove vital. As I've explained to you in other videos, social media is the playground of the narcissist. There are whispers in California that the Duchess will soon return to Instagram, which she left in 2020, after it was agreed that the couple could no longer keep their Sussex royal monogram. Harry's wife's return would be sure to cause tension. As a report in the latest issue of Vanity Fair puts it, when the royal family modernised the social media push, put the royals at the hands of those watchers and the types of parasocial competition pitting it seemed to seize on and promote, like Team Jen versus Team Angelina or Liverpool versus Manchester United. Aggressive and profane fights broke out between groups of self-described Harry's wife and Kate fans. By late 2018, Cambridge versus Sussex had gone from digital matchbait to reality. How do the rest of the royals feel about this potential comeback? Apprehensive, to say the least. One source close to the family tells the author that Harry's wife's vision is luminous and quite frankly scary. After Harry's wife and Harry's relatively silence last year, the palace could finally breathe a sigh of relief. But then, in quick succession, came the Netflix documentary, That Jeremy Clarkson Column and Harry's memoir Spare. The Clarkson column blew up after he referenced an infamous Game of Thrones scene and cast Harry's wife as Cersei. He wrote, "At night, I'm unable to sleep as I lie there, grinding my teeth and dreaming of the day when she's made to parade naked through the streets of every town in Britain while the crowds chant 'shame' and throw lumps of excrement at her." The ill-considered broadside against Harry's wife, for which he later apologised, hurt the royals the hardest, with soon-to-be Queen Camilla confiding in a friend that Clarkson was so unhelpful, just as we were really getting on the front foot of all of this. While Harry's wife may be able to scramble back into some Hollywood circles, it's unlikely to be quite as rarefied a crowd as she once hoped. Meanwhile, her relationship with the royal family is pretty near irreparable. At this stage, there is little doubt about the palace's feelings about her. As harmful as Harry's wife's actions in the last year have been, a source close to the royals states that much of the damage was already done, and that the personal feelings of the late Queen loom large. Apparently, the Queen saw through Harry's wife. As I've explained to you before, that is not a surprise, as a consequence of the fact that as a normal, and with somebody who has had plenty of experience of dealing with narcissists in various shapes and forms through her reign, although the late Queen Elizabeth might not have recognised that Harry's wife is a narcissist, she will have identified that she was very problematic, troublesome, and going to continue to behave that way. Indeed, the late Queen remarked that Harry's wife was evil during a drinks reception at a dinner the late monarch hosted at Balmoral in August last year. Everybody's eyebrows hit the ceiling, the source revealed. It was out of character for the Queen to use such a word as evil to describe Harry's wife, but she saw straight through her. It was a startling sentence to hear from the most forgiving woman on earth. At the drinks before dinner, a small group were talking. And it was about Harry meeting Harry's wife and then describing her as evil. By this point, everybody knew about the Queen's health being in decline, and she had months left. And it would appear, of course, that she was probably aware of this and therefore felt that it was appropriate to express what she really thought about Harry's wife. Throughout the last 3 years, of course, Harry's wife and Harry have consistently claimed that there was no bad blood between them and the monarch. Of course, Harry's wife will say that because she's deluded. Harry will say it because he's wrapped in the delusion that his wife has created. Harry's wife will maintain that because her narcissism at least recognises that it wouldn't be prudent to make reference to the fact that there was bad blood between her and the monarch. However, it also was done as part of her facade management. Nevertheless, biographer Tom Bower's book, Revenge, Harry's Wife, Harry and the War Between the Windsors, cites unnamed sources that claim the Queen once remarked of her husband's funeral, "Thank goodness Harry's wife is not coming." Royal watchers believe that Harry's wife and Harry's reservations to implicitly blame Queen Elizabeth for any of the wrongdoings of the royal family was an intentional move in order to return to royal life if they ever needed to. But the more we hear of the Queen's supposed feelings, the less likely that seems. In actual fact, the reason why they didn't criticise her was because, at that moment in time, it would be deemed by Harry's wife's narcissism as an imprudent step to take. The fact is, the Queen had dealt with many people similar to Harry's wife, and therefore she recognised the behaviours that she engaged in were highly problematic and labelled them as evil. The Queen saw it. Many other people see it. Is she evil? Well, certainly the case that much of what she does could be labelled as evil. The way that she treats people, using them, drawing them in, sucking them dry, and then kicking them to one side. Particularly, for instance, her behaviour towards her father, who suffers from ill health, who she has evidently smeared to numerous people and has had nothing to do with for numerous years. Similarly, the behaviour that she exhibits in with merchandising and treating her children as objects may well be viewed as evil. The bullying behaviours that she has allegedly been engaged in could well be viewed as evil. The way that she forms relationships with people and then dispenses with them, from friends and family, could also be viewed as evil. The fact that she continued to smear two elderly people indirectly with allegations of racism when they were in their dotage in terms of Prince Philip and Queen Elizabeth could also be viewed as evil. Remember, Harry's wife does not sit there and regard herself as some Machiavellian uber-villain that would ordinarily be found in a hollowed-out volcano plotting the annihilation of the earth. She thinks she's hard done to. She thinks she's the victim in all of this. She, of course, wants to get back at people because her narcissism drives her to do so when her fury is ignited. But the fact is, her behaviours could very much be labelled as evil. Most people, when looking at it, would describe her behaviour as poor, disgusting, awful, and there would be those that would, just as the Queen did, describe her as evil. It would be interesting to have known what further the Queen might have done if she'd have lived longer with regard to Harry's wife. Perhaps ultimately she was pleased that the Duchess of Overseas was very much the Duchess of Overseas, and that she just wanted her out of the hair of the royal family. But to brand her as evil is an accurate label with regard to her behaviours, and is demonstrative of the ability of the Queen to see the way that someone would behave. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.